Hello, and welcome to the Lessons Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Colleen McCracken. I've been looking for ways to increase music education accessibility, and I believe that this podcast can make a difference. The Lessons Unlocked podcast uses a virtual platform to engage with student musicians through masterclass style instruction. Students may submit a recording if they're playing for in-depth feedback to be shared with all listeners. This way, students who submit can get feedback, and any other student with access to the podcast can learn from the masterclass. I'm also adding a Q&A section to the podcast, so please submit any questions that come up for you via the website lessonsunlockedpodcast.com. This week's name to know is Amrutha Koteeswaran. She is a flutist, educator, and arts advocate whose work bridges performance, teaching, and community engagement. She is currently pursuing her doctorate of musical arts at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro under Dr. Erica Boysen, where she also serves as a graduate teaching assistant. Amrutha has performed with several collegiate and professional ensembles, with appearances at the Texas Music Educators Association Conference, the College Band Directors National Association Conference, and the North Carolina Music Educators Association Conference. She's a member of the chamber group Once Upon a Tune, a chamber group that combines woodwind quintet percussion and voice to bring children's stories to life, and is committed to creating more musical children's programming, as well as the Banyan Trio, a woodwind trio working toward accessible chamber music. As a soloist, she has been a finalist in the UNCG Student Artist Competition and Cincinnati Young Artist Competition, first alternate of the Central Ohio Flute Association Young Artist Competition, winner of the Texas Flute Society Masterclass Competition, and a featured artist with the Austin Flute Society. She has performed in masterclasses with leading flutists such as Leon Baisi, Jim Walker, and Connor Nelson. Equally committed to education, Amrutha maintains a thriving private studio across the nation and has worked extensively with middle school, high school, and collegiate students across Texas and North Carolina. She has served as a guest lecturer at various universities lecturing on Indian classical music and its role within Western music, and has served as a faculty member for numerous band and orchestra camps. She has had master classes at universities such as Baylor University, University of Texas at San Antonio College, and the University of Texas at Austin. Her teaching emphasizes technical fluency, musical expressivity, and cultural awareness. Beyond the stage and classroom, Amrutha contributes to the field through leadership and service. She is the Community Music Lesson Program Coordinator at UNCG, a committee member for the University Concert and Lecture Series, member of the UNCG Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, and the Exhibitors and Showcase Concert Coordinator for the National Flute Association. She also serves as event coordinator for Through the Staff, a 501c3 organization committed to making music education more accessible. Her administrative and outreach work reflects her passion for building bridges between students, educators, and communities through music. Outside of music, Amrutha enjoys crocheting and knitting, reading any and all books, and any live music concerts. You can always find Amrutha walking her dog, Simba, and on the hunt for some good new music. Amrutha holds a Master of Music degree from the University of Texas at Austin, where she studied with Marianne Gadigian, and a Bachelor of Music degree from Baylor University under the guidance of Dr. Charlotte Daniel. She is honored to be recognized as a Haynes Young Artist. And I am so thrilled to share that she is our first guest clinician on the podcast and will be doing today's masterclass. This week's piece of the week is Zoo Song by Nina Shakar. In the program notes, the composer writes, "Like many children, I vividly remember my first trip to the zoo. I remember being amazed by Mother Nature, seeing the distinctive talents and features that all of her unique life forms had. I also remember my parents being annoyed at my nonstop attempts to mimic the animal sounds I had just heard. My endless moos, oinks, meows, and roars were probably not the most pleasant noises, at least not when I made them." Zoo Song is an attempt to recreate this common childhood experience. The singing flutist assumes the character of a child who is obsessed with various animals. The performer squawks and brays in a desperate attempt to be each animal, only to prove unsuccessful at the end. There are several excellent recordings of Zoo Song up on YouTube, and I'm going to link one recorded by Amrutha Koteeswaran down below. This week's highlighted organization is the Austin Flute Society. The Austin Flute Society is a nonprofit organization formed in 1987 to organize educational opportunities, member recitals, and guest flutist events in the Austin area. They are proud to continue this tradition today and also offer an annual festival, young artist competition, and thriving flute choirs. Now for the masterclass section, we have two very talented performers, and I am so honored to have our first guest clinician, Amrutha Koteeswaran. I am so thrilled, and I can't wait to hear her advice, her feedback for our two performers. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with Mitchell from South Carolina playing an etude. Mitchell, take it away.
Hi, great job on this. I can tell that you put in a lot of effort and you've worked really hard to get to the level of technicality and musicality that you have. And I'm really excited to get started on the masterclass. So you've done a lot of work on the beginning, and I can hear the dynamics, I can hear the musicality, the poco rubato. It's beautiful. I want you to try and play with tone colors, which I know is such an abstract term, and I hated hearing that when I was younger because, like, what does it mean? You know? And I mean, really, it's just like play around with the different tone qualities. But I think saying tone colors makes it a little bit more palatable and easy to make it music, like within the musicality. And so the way that I grew my quote unquote tone color palette is that I picked a color and then I would sort of play my long tones or play my piece for the day in whatever I thought that color sounded like. And once I came to a tone that was like, yes, this is deep purple, I would immediately go onto a notes or a paper or something and I would write down exactly what I was doing to get to that color. I would write down, okay, deep purple, I'm having to have a more vertical oral cavity and angle my air lower and the sound has more edge and I have this kind of aperture, and I write every technical part of it so that when I was playing music and it would be like, oh, this could use like a tone shift, I've already curated my palette of what I can pull from. And then you get to a point where you learn how to blend between that and the colors themselves sort of become negligible, but that was my way of incorporating different tone colors into my music, and I hope that's helpful for you. So 5/8 into 6/8 into more 5/8 is such a fun rhythmic scheme, and I implore you to make that more obvious. because it's like, it's throwing the listener off when you get into that 6/8 measure and it's like, whoa, there's another beat here. And then you switch back into 5/8 and it's like, we're missing something. And so really lean into those accents that are on beat 4 of the 5/8, and then really lean into the accents on the 6/8 so that the listener is able to get exactly where the beats are. And also it gives it a little bit more of a dance feel to it, because for me, I always feel like any meter that has an 8 on the bottom is very dance-like. And that's just how it computes for my brain. And so the beginning of this just being like, it's very like leaving you to want to go forward. And I would put those accents in and sort of make the first 3 beats very like like you're tiptoeing around. Very crisp, clear articulation. Keep your core support going. When you get to measure 12, I think you can be a lot louder. That's a big moment. That's the first forte in the allegro. Really lean into it. And also, you don't have beat 1 in all of these 6/8 measures. And so it's continuing to throw the listener off. Measure 16, even louder. You're up in the stratosphere. You've got back to 5/8, fortissimo. Really lean into those dynamics and it'll give you sort of like a dance feel to it. Your diminuendo towards the end of this allegro section was fantastic. I think that you can get a lot more quieter and think of a very transparent tone color. Once again, tone colors. Then you can sort of feel like a little mouse teetering around when you get to measure 21. Just really lean into that. I sang the rhythm wrong, but you understood. And then you go into this crescendo and it's this big moment and you want to pull away when you get to the ba-da-da-da-dum. But don't really push forward. You're at a big place. You want to end strong over there. Oh, and this end is just so beautiful again. And you're really pulling in your poco rubato. It's just so beautiful. I can't get over that. The end of this is really where the like sparkle is at the end of this etude. And so you get to this mezzo forte up on this high A flat, the ba da 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 da. And I think you can really sort of add a little bit of a crescendo or something to just like lean into the high notes that are happening in this area in that 3rd octave and the top of the 2nd octave. And I think it'll make that diminuendo that you have in measure 29 just so much more impactful if you're really vibrant at the beginning of 28. And I would suggest not taking a breath before that last measure because it sort of stops the flow of music, and then you have that ba-da, da-da-da. And if you take a breath at that bar line, it does kind of cut off that musical idea. So I would push through all the way to the end, and you're diminuendoing, so you'll be able to make that without needing to take a breath because you'll be at a very quiet volume. Fantastic job. I loved hearing this etude, and I wish you all the luck with this piece of music.
Thank you, Mitchell, for sharing your music with us. And thank you, Amrutha, for sharing some wonderful advice. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to Jason, who is also from South Carolina. Jason, take it away with the Chaminade Concertino.
hello, hello. Great job with this piece. It's a very technical piece, very hard to put together with piano, and you've done a fantastic job. And I'm super excited to get going with this masterclass. Fantastic job on this intro. It's obviously a very well-known intro in the flute world. So let's talk pitch and then a couple of stylistic things. So the first note, you landed it very well, and then pitch started to go flat after that, sort of through the rest of this intro. And then as the technique came in, the air support and all of that was sort of disappearing. But I don't think it's an air angle issue. I think it's an air pressure issue, because you get to the end of this intro when you're on the high D and the ba da 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 back on a higher register in a third octave, and the pitch was fantastic, and there was like support and vibrato, which lends me to believe that you're panicking a little bit about all of the notes that are happening and you're just forgetting core support. And so something that I like to do is I'll do wall sits are a little iffy, but sometimes wall sits are helpful, or even just leaning up against a wall and pushing my back sort of forces me to engage all sides of my abs. And that helps a lot with keeping core support. I do a lot of sit-ups and crunches. If you do Pilates and know what 100s are, I do that when I'm playing, just doing long tones to sort of remind myself which parts of my abs need to be supporting me while I'm playing. And that air pressure is what's going to keep the air quick. It's going to keep it going in a direction that keeps your pitch up, and it's going to allow you to do more with your tone and your vibrato. Stylistically, there's a couple of spots that you're clipping at the end, like at A, I think if I remember, bum ba da 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 da. Yeah, so any sort of ba da da, you're clipping those. And so this intro is like ooey gooey, like I'm like trying to think like a lemon bar. That's what's coming to my head. But like it's just so mushy, and you don't really want any places that you're sort of like boop and clipping the ends of the slurs. So really lean into the next slur. Da 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 da. The rearticulation is for clarity, not for clipping it. As you get through all of this technique and the poco stringendo, more air, more support. I have this very stupid thing that I say that if, like the old memes of the stork bringing a baby, if the baby is flute playing, the stork is air. Your baby will not get to its destination without enough air. And so when you're struggling with technique and technical passages, number one thing you want to do is immediately put more air pressure, more air volume and more air pressure, and see if that helps, because about 70% of the time it usually does help a lot. So this section, it doesn't look like it needs a lot of piano cueing, but in my experience playing it, there's a lot of times where you kind of have to be clear where your downbeat is with the piano. And so it sounds like you know what you want musically and you know what direction you want to take it. Just make sure that when you're working with piano, you talk with your partner about, hey, this is where I'm doing this and this is where I'm doing that. And I'll cue this downbeat and I'll cue that. And we need to land here together. And I think that'll really help cement what you want out of this musically. And a little bit of what's happening, because I think there's a little slight disconnect between piano and flute, is you're waiting for piano, piano is waiting for you, and tempo is slowing down. And then while this is happening, you're also losing air support because it's taking longer than what you planned. And so, once again, really leaning into that air support, using your abs, high air pressure will help with the pitch, and also just cueing your piano and having a conversation with them on what you both want musically will keep this moving forward. There's a couple of spots that are still a little clipped, so keep that air going. Make this as mushy as you can. Towards the end of this chunk here, the ba da ba 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 da 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 da. That is one spot that I would put a little bit of space between the ba da ba before the A. You want to put a little bit of a clarity and like an articulation like you're spitting rice. Very crisp, clear, pressurized behind the tongue. And that'll get you that clarity that you want out of it. And you can make more musical decisions within that. This section is very similar to the section before, and you're doing a great job with the musicality of it. I want to hear more. I want to hear so much more. I can tell you have all these musical ideas, and I want all of them. So like really bring it out. And there's a couple of spots where it sounded like the note was cracking down in the upper part of the second register, but then the note wasn't sounding as much on the lower register, which leads me to believe that once again, air pressure, core support still needs to be increased, but I'm wondering if perhaps a little bit of a lower air angle might be beneficial, or just playing around with the angle of air that you're using, or even if your flute's a little rolled in or rolled out. Just sort of lengthening or shortening that reed of air, I think, is something you can play with to see which suits your needs better for being able to play through all the ranges. Oh, this section is so beautiful. It's so fun, but it's so gnarly at the same time. And for me, what's really helpful is I find anchor notes. And I also find notes that I like to say that my air is leading towards. And so in the first line of this, I'm really leaning my air towards the first A of the second measure. I'm just trying to get through that first measure. And then I get to the second measure, and the noodles kind of take care of itself with your hand. But that second line, you've got a bunch of accents. And the first half of the accented beats are different, but the second half is the same. So you can really bring out that first half and pull away on the second one. It's not as important. We really want to hear the changes in the G to the G sharp to the A sharp. It's like creating the tension. Where is it going to go? That's what we want to hear. So really lean into that. And there's a couple of places in this where you can sort of bring out that vibrancy that flutes have. Right after this trill, the bup, 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 all of that, like that vibrant flute color that you've played with before on this recording, but a crisp articulation. And then the da, 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 da. I know it's piano. Really make it sparkle. That E, just like, oh, it's beautiful. It's almost like it has angel wings. You got to make that one sparkle and put a little bit of vibrato and tone color differences and just play around with it. There's a lot that you can do in this section to make it your own. The rest of the section, fantastic. All of those sort of like octave jumps, once again, gnarly. But for me, once again, what helped are anchor notes and leading towards something. So I picked a couple of notes, and it takes a little bit of trial and error. But what I've found is that in a technical passage, there is usually 1 to 2 notes that if you nail that note, the rest of the notes behind it are fine. I don't know what it is. I think it's a psychological thing, but it's like if I get this one note, the rest of this is okay. And so I would go through this and practice and see what's your note. And usually it's the one that you feel the most stable and the most anchored with. Whether that's in terms of like tone quality or if that's in terms of how many fingers you've got down. But just really find something to root yourself to because there's so much going on through all of this. Towards the end of this chunk, the measure before J, dig into those low D sharps. That will really sort of help you trampoline off through these runs. And then that low E, that measure of J, so much edge. Lean into it, a big crescendo. Those triplets at the end need to be like the most sparkling, vibrato-filled, bright notes that you've played. Because you're getting really to like the big points of the piece going on forward. Beautiful cadenza. I think this is one of my favorite cadenzas in the flute repertoire. It's just so pretty. Ugh. So I know that cadenzas come off as this like sort of lawless space where time doesn't exist. You can do whatever you want. But for me, I think that time still does exist. The bar lines are just gone. And so there's a lot of places where you're taking time. I want you to find the spots where you've got to give the time back, where you play quicker. And for me, in this one, it's easiest to find that with sort of where am I accelerandoing and where am I slowing back down. And so for me, the beginning of this da 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 da, that's a place where I speed up. I create the excitement in the speeding up of it to the C sharp, and then you hold it out there. Da 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 da. You stop for a second, and then you get to this melody that's been embellished, and then you have another rallentando. So find the sections that you can speed up to create that tension. You have a really good ear for playing with the silence in cadenzas, which is so important. You've got to leave the listener with space to anticipate. I think there might be a little bit too much silence in between some of these breaks that's making it lose its impact by the time you get to the end of the cadenza. So pick a couple of spots that you think, maybe 2 or 3 max, that you're like, the silence here is impactful and important to what I want out of this cadenza, and then reduce the space in the other places that you're creating. Yay, recap! And it's so beautiful. I love it. So throughout this masterclass, I've mentioned the word support. I've talked about supporting more on the majority of the long notes, but I haven't talked about tapers, which I think also is included in support. So I can tell that the ends of these phrases you want to taper off, which is hard when you're really supporting because that's creating that air pressure, right? And so for tapers, for me, I like to call them elevator abs. I got this from another flute professor. And when you feel the support, when you're playing, really resonating, pushing all that air, getting the pressure, you feel it in the lower part of your abs, sort of your belly button and below. And when you taper, you want that to move up to the top part, closer to like your chest. And so you've got to move that elevator ab up. And so the way you can try practicing this is standing still and standing up straight, not still. Well, stand still if you want, but stand up straight and then lift one of your legs up until you're balanced. And then once you're balanced, keep lifting it higher and feel which parts of your abs are moving. And that's what you're going to use when you taper and you release these things. Fantastic job! You got through this beast of a piece so well. One thing I'm going to say about this presto is, once again, that sort of crisp articulation, that's like spitting rice that has come up a couple of times here. This is its moment to shine. You've got this like end where people haven't heard this yet in the piece. It's like, wow, this is new material. Make it crisp, make it new, flashy. That spitting rice, like, really pressurize the air behind the tongue before you send it out. And I think that'll really add some sparkle to this end that's already so, so beautiful. Fantastic job on this. This is one of my favorite pieces and one of the first flute pieces I heard, so it's a very special one to me. And I hope this helps in your process, and I hope you have a great time learning this piece even more.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing your music with us, and thank you, Amrutha, for sharing some wonderful advice. I am so thrilled that we have had our first guest clinician. Everyone give Amrutha and our performers a round of applause. Yay! Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lessons Unlocked podcast. A huge thanks to our two performers of the day, Mitchell and Jason, and to all of you for continuing to be a part of this community. As you head out into your week, I encourage you to listen to Zoo Song, and I will link Amrutha's recording of it down below. And of course, a final thank you to all music educators who are working hard to make music accessible and meaningful for their students. I'll be back soon with more. Until then, happy practicing and bye for now.